Yan. Hello mga kameta. Kamusta kayo dyan? Ayan. Nakahanap tayo ng konti. Yan. Hello mga Yan. Hello kama. Yan. Yan. Hello mga kameta. Kamusta kayo dyan? Yan. Lakad tayo ng konti dito. Magpapainit tayo ng konti. Alam mo naman tayo, Baguio boy, at mahilig talaga tayo sa mga mountains. Lalong-lalo na pag medyo kakaiba, no? Andito na tayo, medyo malapit na tayo sa Arctic Circle. At wala naman polar bears, but pag-usapan natin itong mga kameta, no? I mean, usually pinapanood niyo ako pag naghahanap kayo ng political analysis, naghahanap kayo ng geopolitical analysis, naghahanap kayo ng social or economic analysis, or naghahanap lang kayo ng bardagulan. Alam ko yan. The thing is, the problem with communications today is that people are always looking for a niche, no? People are always looking for someone to give them ideas about a particular phenomenon, no? Or a particular aspect of life. Pero alam naman tayo mga kameta, parati tayo naniniwala in being at least as well-rounded as possible. And, I won't say Renaissance man, but at least, have the so-called Da Vinci method, right? Which is, try to be good, really good in one thing at least. And then have a degree of competence in a number of other things, so that you can combine them, so that it's kind of like mixed martial arts, no? It's kind of like mixed martial arts. That's what I love about mixed martial arts, especially for those who transition from specializing in one martial arts and then moving into mixed martial arts. So let's say ikaw ay isang judo champion before, let's say ikaw ay isang karate champion, GSP for instance, or isang judo champion. Let's say people like Benil Darius, or wrestling champions, or very competitive in wrestling world. Let's say people like John Jones. Some people even, playing rugby or football, like Volkanovski, so on and so forth. I can give you a lot of examples of people who transition from being really good in one sport and then going to the MMA and learning about a number of other sports and then combining them together to mixed martial arts. My sense is that's a very, very useful framework for also being what I believe is a kind of a well-rounded person in the 21st century. And if you want to be a leader, if you want to be a source of inspiration, if you want to be someone who's bringing ideas to the world, good ideas to the world, good vibes to the world, it's important that you're not confined literally to just one corner of the world as much as possible. Learn to push your boundaries, to get out of your comfort zone, to move around the world, see the beauty of the world. And for me, when it comes to nature, mga kameta, well, the thing with nature is that there are two things about it, or I would actually say three things about nature, because of the special circumstances we find ourselves at the dawn of the 21st century. Now, the thing is this, well, actually we're past the dawn. We're moving into the mid 21st century. No, I mean, the thing is, first of all, what I always appreciate with nature is that it grounds you. It reminds us of the enormous grandeur that lies out there outside these silos that we build, which we call, cities, for instance. So all those urban centers, when, our dreams and our passions and our ambitions, all of those things are confined to. It's very important to go out there, to go out into nature, some sort of wilderness even, to put things in perspective and realize that many things that you obsess over, as important as they may seem, in the greater scheme of things, perhaps they're not the most important thing in life. The second thing I like about getting in touch with nature, especially this kind of nature, kind of a wilderness kind of nature, is that it also reminds you, I mean, I wouldn't be able to get here to Greenland, for instance, if not for all the infrastructure built here, if not for all the technology that you can say I'm wearing right now. Not only the technology to record this, but the technology also to to be able to keep warm enough to conduct this conversation on the thing. Thankfully, there's this beautiful sun. But still, I mean, it's pretty cold here. -10, -12, -15 degrees at some point. Thankfully, not now. But things can get very cold here. So these technologies allow us to do this. But I mean, let's not forget, there wouldn't have been a Greenland if not for, Inuit people, if not for all of these different countries who came over here and built the basic infrastructure, the very roads that I use in order to walk towards here. So it tells you something about our ancestors, the degree of ambition, the degree of resilience, the degree of actually grittiness and audacity that they had. I mean, just think of the first settlers who come here, right? I mean, imagine you come here, there was nothing here before, and then probably there were more predators, more animals, more, threatening creatures around. In as much as I would say, of course, we are also a very destructive species, but ibang usapan yan, we can go to that later on. But you see what I'm saying? Like the thing also with nature, especially when you go to the outer margins of the world, when you go to the frontiers, you begin to appreciate how audacious, how gritty. I don't like using the word resilient. Like, parang binaboy na yung word ng resilient in the context of the Philippines. That's what Trapos using in order to say, bahala na kayo dyan, di ba? Bahala na kayo. Survive na lang kayo dyan, di ba? So I'll just use grittiness. Yung grit and audacity ng human being is amazing. I mean, think of first people who came here, the first people who built the infrastructure in the roads here, with very rudimentary technology, if any at all, right? Look at the distances that people from Siberia and Asia cover to go to Canada and all the way to reach here, right? So if you look at people here, for instance, they come from all over the world, right? All over the world. Now, I'm not gonna get into the internal debates between Greenland and Denmark and all of that. Mahabang usapan yan. I'm just thankful to have made it here. Because actually, and this is a travel advisory, if you plan to go to Greenland and you happen to have a Schengen visa, make sure it's a Schengen visa from Denmark, right? Because some of us have Schengen visas multi-year from different countries for different events. Like in my case, because I was invited to Munich Security Conference the other year, so my Schengen visa is from Germany. But Germany does not cover Greenland, right? So if you're going to come to Greenland, make sure you get your Schengen visa in Denmark itself, and make sure that in your Schengen visa it says that you're allowed to go to Denmark, because to Greenland, because they're very strict about it, right? They have to also, people of Greenland also have to protect what they have here. Now, the third thing, of course, with nature, and that's why, I come from the Philippines, I come from the tropics, but I was born in Baguio, so that gave me a little bit of appreciation for cold and all of that. And for mountains. Well, the thing is this, actually not far away from here, probably 10 to 15 kilometers from here, there are glaciers. And a little bit above that, let's say 30 to 40 kilometers, it's just the beginning of this infinity of icebergs, right? That extend us, millions of hectares. Comparatively, it covers from southern tip of Spain, so southernmost tip of Europe, essentially blending into Morocco and North Africa, all the way to Denmark. That's how large the icebergs in this area are. I mean, the amazing natural features that you see here. At the same time, let's be honest, we don't know how long these things are gonna last. With climate change, actually, to be honest, it's not as hot as as cold as I expected. At this point in we're almost heading to Christmas, right? I expected things to be much colder here. Of course, as a human being, I appreciate the fact that it's not super cold. It's not negative 20 or 30 degrees. Because there's just so much that technology can do. At some point, things can get really unbearable unless you have acclimated fully. Now, the thing is, with climate change, I'm not sure how long all of these icebergs, all of these glaciers, all of these things are gonna last. I don't know. So the other thing I have here is a sense of gratitude. And hopefully, we get our act together, right? We get our act together, get rid of all these flat earther conspiracy theories, pro carbon emission, pro oligarch kind of climate change denial nonsense, right? And really work on sets of solutions that also go beyond all of this, Elon Musk self-congratulatory, let's go EV battery and everything would be fine kind of nonsense, right? Yes, of course, electric cars could be helpful, but let's not forget, extracting lithium and all of that, it could be also extremely environmentally destructive. We have to transition away. But of course, just before coming here, I was in Scandinavia, Stockholm, and then back in Copenhagen. And if you look at countries like Denmark, and increasingly across Scandinavia, these people are going almost 100% renewable energy, right? Windmills, solar, so on and so forth. And they have the storage capacity and the transmission capacity to make sure that whatever they gather in terms of energy, in their high seas, in those special time when the solar energy is at its height, in terms of its absorption by their solar panels, or the windmills in terms of how strong the wind is, they make sure that they can store that and then they can transmit that across the country. Now, so there are three things that make nature very, very special. Right, they help you to get out of your silo, all of those petty things we fight over, or not so petty things, but the world is more than just our silos, our urban silos. The second thing is, especially when you go to the frontiers of the world, you realize how ambitious, how gritty, and how amazing our ancestors were. And third, this is what I really appreciate is, we don't know how long the most amazing things in this world are gonna last given climate change and all of that. Now, I'm hoping my best that we can get our act together to avoid the worst. But the reality is that many beautiful things that have been taken for granted may not be around in 30, 40, 50 years or so. Climate change may happen much faster in terms of its negative implications. Again, I'm not here to do all the woke and stuff like that to make you feel guilty. I'm just saying, if you get a chance, go and explore nature. It could be a forest near you. It could be a beautiful river near you. It could be the beautiful animals, right? That are, running out of their habitat or are gonna go extinct, right? I mean, sadly, a lot of animals that are on the verge of extinction, you can only see them if you're like, I don't know, in some not museum, hopefully not, but you see them in some zoo, right? So these are the things that you have to keep in mind. You have to have a broader, bigger, wiser perspective in life. And wisdom doesn't come easily. Wisdom doesn't come just with information. Wisdom also doesn't come with just sheer experience. Because there are many people who have lived decades and decades on earth, but it seems to have not learned anything. So the other thing I want to talk about here is power of reflection. Power of reflection, power of having a vision. Now, being visionary and being wise, it's not only about being smart and having a lot of information in your mind. My goodness, there are just countless geeks in this world, right? Who have a lot of information in their mind. I mean, I remember, like sometimes you go to a supermarket, there's this foreigner guy who says, how is this spelled out? And then suddenly there's someone out there, some geek out there, volunteers super information, and then goes on and on and on. It's like, there are many smart people out there. And if you run out of smart people, there's always Wikipedia there, right? Not that I recommend it for scholarly research and all of that. But anyway, going back to this. You see, wisdom is about, Bismarck, the great German chancellor, probably one of the greatest statesmen of the modern era, and a great inspiration for leaders all across the world, including Lee Kuan Yew and Deng Xiaoping, among others, and probably even Angela Merkel. He said something like, only fools learn from their own experience. So it's extremely important for you to not only make the most out of your experiences in terms of picking the best lessons out of it, in terms of making sure you don't make mistakes again. Because when you make mistakes, when you go wrong, there are three ways of approaching it, right? One way is you're gonna say, eh, wala na eh, tapos na, it's done. Let's not cry over, something that is already over. There's nothing we can do. It's spilled milk, right? So there's that perspective, that kind of fatalistic perspective. Has happened. Let's just move on. Let's not dwell on it. And then there's a second way of approaching it, is as toxic, as problematic. So one is positive toxicity, or toxic positivity. Sorry, it's quite cold. But the other one is toxic negativity. Like, oh my goodness, it's the end of the world. I'm the most horrible person. Okay, that's also not helpful. So there's always a third way. As Buddha said, there's always a middle way. There's always the third way. So the third way, in a dialectical sense, is whereby you really try to grow as a person through your experiences and throughout the years. And you try to always get better than what you were a year ago, a month ago, a day ago, or even an hour ago, right? And if you're really a deep person, you're going to be better by the second, right? So you reflect, you extract the best lessons, you tap yourself on the back for things you got right so that you're encouraged positively. But you also remind yourself, if you got something wrong, you'll say, okay, it's not the end of the world, but I shouldn't repeat those mistakes again anymore, right? So it's very important to have that sense. So that's wisdom for me. But, being a wise person is, well, good for you. But there are also a lot of wise people out there who are just good for themselves, right? And there's a reason why Buddha, after achieving nirvana, that kind of enlightenment, freedom, feeling from all the nonsense that takes grip of the human mind. If you look at Buddha, after nirvana, attaining nirvana, he actually came back to serve the world and to share the message, share the love, share the joy, share the a possible roadmap to enlightenment for quote-unquote lesser beings, right? And just imagine the billions of people throughout the centuries that benefited from the wisdom of Buddha. And Buddha, Gautama, his wisdom was one of profound psychological analysis, deep insight into the nature of the mind, right? Now, not to digress too much, going back to this, wisdom is one thing, but you also can be even greater. You can be greater than being wise. You can be someone who actually contributes to the betterment of the world, right? And that's what Buddha did. He was not there only for his own liberation. He was not only there for his own nirvana, but he decided to come back to earth and share the message, even if that entailed a lot of risks, that entailed a lot of watering down of possibly his ideas, that entailed the possible adulteration of his absolutely brilliant ideas into catechism, and so on and so forth. Sure, 100%. But he took that risk because he felt people of the world deserve to hear the message, to have a glimpse into the enlightenment that he stumbled upon after all the grueling journey he went through. Now, being visionary, that's what Buddha did after attaining nirvana. He was not just a wise man, he became a visionary. He became a great world historical figure. Now, being visionary is not only an intellectual thing. It's not only about wisdom, but it's also about emotional strength. And who are visionaries? Visionaries are people who understand what is wrong with the world, but they don't allow that to overwhelm them emotionally. And at the same time, they attain significant degree of strength of character and emotional audacity to push the boundaries of growth and success, right? Now, in the case of the Philippines, I would say easily Rizal and his generation, that was it. They were absolute visionaries. They were not only wise for their age. I mean, Rizal was what? At my age, Rizal had already produced so much. I mean, he had already laid down the foundation of the idea of the great Asian nationalist hero. I mean, Rizal was to be praised by nationalists. Liang Qichao, to Tagore's followers. I mean, all around Asia, Rizal was held as a symbol of anti-colonial nationalist hero. Decades after his execution and his martyrdom, right? So that's how great these people were. I mean, their 20s and their 30s, mid and early 30s, they already had achieved so much. But they were also visionaries. I mean, just look at the novels of Rizal. Just look at the novels of Rizal. How profound and complex this person was in terms of his portrayal of the Philippine society. How he got to appreciate all the shades of human character, all the shades of class politics, all the shades of tanggalin natin yung shades natin, shades tayo ng shades. All shades of human frailties and human greatness and human resilience. He captured all of that. He captured all of that in his work. Amazing work. So this was a man who easily met the criteria of genius as laid down by Fitzgerald, which is a genius is someone who can hold multiple contradictory ideas and this is the important caveat, and still stay sane. In the case of Rizal, he didn't only stay sane, he became a hero. He stayed strong and fought hard until the end for the Filipino people. And the same can be said for a lot of other ilustrados. I mean, Isabella de las Reyes, who's my favorite and I think the least appreciated given his intellectual prowess, was another amazing Filipino who managed to actually survive, not get executed by both Spanish or Americans, in fact become a senator during the American colonization, but use his powers as a statesman, his powers as an intellectual to push for mobilization of the Filipino working class and to push for progressive politics. Arguably, he was the first progressive socialist Asian, or among the first, right, Asians who were at the forefront of pushing for progressive socialist ideas, so social democratic ideals, no? So, and then I can go on and on and on with a lot of other illustrations. Of course, the Luna brothers, well, I mean, pretty complicated characters, but I mean, just look at the painting of Juan Luna, or just look at the military genius of General Luna, Antonio Luna, right? And then on and on and on and on, right? So what I'm saying here is that we have had all of these amazing people in our history. I mean, we also had very good literary figures in the 20th century. Nick Joaquin, and more recently, of course, we had Franklin Jose. I don't know. I mean, I think one of the problems with us as a society sometimes is, we don't know where to look for the right inspiration. There are a lot of these trashy people out there who dominate the headlines, not only trapos and politicians, but a lot of great people who are just, below the radar. Or they're kind of a blip on the radar, but they're crowded out by all of the nonsense out there. So one of the important things we need is to have a roadmap for understanding where can we get great inspiration. That is very, very important. Who are the inspirational figures of our era? Who are the illustrados of our era? Those are things to keep in mind. Very, very important. Now, speaking of being visionary, you see, marami tayong problema sa Pilipinas. Marami tayong sources of frustration. Especially for Filipinos who are abroad, who have been abroad, who constantly travel around the world, see the progress of other countries. Forget about, Europe or US and Japan or Korea. I mean, just look at how far Vietnam or Thailand and those countries have gone compared to us, or even Indonesia for that matter. I mean, when you look at it that way, of course it's easy to feel depressed or say walang pag-asa ang Filipinas. I mean, I had countless friends and all coming to me and say, walang pag-asa ang Filipinas, what are we gonna do? I mean, and I was like, goodness, you guys were lucky enough to study in a university like UP. So, scholar kayo ng bayan. And you were lucky enough to go and study abroad on scholarship. You have all of these benefits. You have all of these privileges. For heaven's sake, give back something to the country and stop whining. And do something positive and push the envelope. It goes without saying, I say the same thing to myself when I become whiny and etc. And melodrama and all of that. It's like, for heaven's sake, we owe it to the Filipino people. We owe it to the sa ating mga kababayan na hindi nagkaroon yung mga oportunidad na ganito. Yung mga ating mga kababayan na through their hardship, funded our state institutions, which provided the education we have today. So these are the things that I talk about. I mean, sense of noble obligation, right? That's important. But even the idea of scholar and by noble obligation is kind of also elitist and a little bit patronizing. So why this just, for heaven's sake, give something back to the community that raised you and just don't think about, oh, me, it's better there and all of that nonsense. I mean, I get it. I completely understand. If people want to move around and move about and find greener pastures, that's your right. But for especially those who can really make huge difference back in their own country, maybe less whiny stuff and more positive, active contribution. But then again, I cannot also blame a lot of people losing hope, because some of the people who decided to stay back in the country, after something, what you see with them is, my goodness, they're full of themselves. They think they're the only heroes. They think they're the only ones who hold the line and all of that. So I know that turns off a lot of people, right? Or look at it, more humble cases like yours truly. Like sometimes, you get so used to bardagulan, because that's the only way to really keep your sanity with all of the nonsense and trash out there, that that the integrity of your message is on the verge of getting compromised. So you have to have that constant self-awareness. So I understand that. Things can get very tough, especially on social media, on Twitter. It gets ugly, it gets tough. So you have to keep your sanity. You have to keep making sure that the integrity of your message is not compromised, and most importantly, your moral integrity is not compromised. So those are the things that you have to keep in mind. So being visionary is about not only being smart, it's not only about being wise, it's also about having the emotional strength to think outside the box just as much as you know what's going inside the box, i.e. what the problems of your nation, and then think of innovative, brave, audacious ways to create new systems, to create new patterns of behavior, to create new ways of thinking. And eventually you never know who you're influencing. Maybe you're influencing the next generation of business leaders or political leaders who may have been beneficiaries of oligarchic politics or oligarchic monopolistic business practices, but also realize that, hey, the Philippines is being left behind. This country could do 10 times better. So it's in our own interest to make sure the Philippines does better. And accordingly, some of them, the more enlightened or less trapo versions, will say, maybe it's time to modernize the Philippines a little bit. You never know. So it's important to push for that. And in even more ideal cases, you may find yourself in a position to push for change yourself. Personally, push for change yourself. So, where is all of this coming from? Because I'll be honest, so over the past day or two, I've been passing through mountains and all of that. And I've been constantly listening to and thinking about the conflict in the Middle East. How intractable, how profound, how tragic the conflicts in that part of the world are. And to think this is the cradle of civilizations. This is where the great religions, Abrahamic religions, come from. This is where great cultures and great monuments can be found. I have visited them. I've been to the pyramids. You can go to Persepolis. You can go to Istanbul. So many amazing things in that part of the world. So much history of great scholarship, Avicenna, Al-Farabi, Al-Biruni, Al-Khwarazmi, I mean, a lot of things. Algebra, calculus, algorithm, one way or another. I mean, that region played a very important role as a bridge for Silk Roads, as a bridge for bringing great ideas together. And yet, look at it today. You see extreme of situations in the Middle East. You go to the Persian Gulf region, you see all of these super rich countries. You move a little bit south to Yemen, one of the poorest countries. And then you move to the Mediterranean region. My goodness, what a variety of experiences you're going to get, right? From Syria to Lebanon, all the way down to Egypt, right? So when I was thinking through it, I was saying, as a Filipino, what is it that we can do, right? And as much as nakakainis yung mga problema sa Pilipinas, as much as nakakadismaya yung mga politiko natin, as much as nakaka-frustrate yung politics natin, my goodness, because we're a relatively young nation, because we don't have the kind of deep-seated atavistic divisions and polarization that other regions of the world suffer from, because we don't have the kind of imperial whatever nonsense, imperialistic nonsense, or parasitic neurosis, or other kind of stuff that help create all sorts of disasters around the world up until today. We're kind of a semi-clean slate. Semi, because we're still grappling with a lot of colonial legacy, psychologically, in terms of our state institutions. But the thing is this: we're a semi-young nation, and that youth, as much as it can get frustrating because we feel we're not a mature democracy, we feel that our state institutions are weak. All of that is true, absolutely true. But also that gives us a space to explore a better and alternative future, right? To learn from the experience of other countries, the best practices, and at the same time making sure we're not bedeviled or bogged down by all sorts of neurosis, all sorts of atavistic tendencies that have prevented the most ancient region of the world from realizing its great potential in the 21st century, right? So this is why perspective matters, because if you just look at us, Philippines, wala naman tayong pyramids, wala naman tayong ganyan, wala tayong Parthenon, wala tayong, I don't know. If you think that way, then wala. But if you think like countries like South Korea 30, 40 years ago, and they were still not South Korea as we know today. If you think like Japan 130, 150 years ago, when they were still a feudalistic backward country. You think of a lot of countries that are newly industrialized or became only rich in the past generation or two. At some point, they were poorer than the Philippines. Today, their per capita was lower than $4,000, which is more or less our per capita income. Their level of economic development was far lower than us. And yet, look at how far they have managed to go. Because at some point, they had visionary leaders who inspired people. And at some point, there were people out there who managed to believe in them and were willing to invest in them and willing to stand by them.